Good evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES live from Euless, Texas. I'm Bear Duplessis. As always, this is our 78th take, and I'm so excited to welcome you all in tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show, a king-size show, worthwhile of awards, one would say. And I'm so excited to welcome in our guest. But before we get that, we have to actually thank the wonderful people that keep our podcast going. That is, of course, our sponsors. And this show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate announced earlier this week that they are launching, in commemoration of the 20th anniversary of Acid Cigars, they are introducing Acid to Germany with the introduction of Acid Mega and Acid Blondie. Royal Agio will be distributing Acid Mega and Acid Blondie in retailers in Germany starting this week and hosting Acid launch events nationwide. For 20 years, Acid has been a staple in humidors across the U.S. and has become the #1 selling brand in the United States. To celebrate this milestone, Drew Estate is excited to launch the Acid Mega and Blondie in Germany and bring the culture and experience to Europe and the world over. So really exciting news from Drew Estate, and they do sponsor ELOSOFUMARTAKES. And if you are watching us tonight via YouTube, we really appreciate you tuning in and checking us out live. Wouldn't be the same without you. But if you are catching us at a later time and downloading this podcast wherever podcasts are available, whether it be Apple, Google Play, Podbeam, Spotify, TuneIn, or again, wherever podcasts are played, you can definitely listen to us anywhere. And you are listening to us exclusively because of Cornelius and Anthony Premium Cigars. Cornelius and Anthony Premium Cigars is steeped in tobacco tradition. For 150 years, the Bailey family has been a part of America's tobacco heritage, passionately caring for the land they cultivate in Keysville, Virginia. Cornelius and Anthony's devotion to the finest grown tobacco and foremost aspects of craftsmanship allows them to introduce the most exquisite cigars to the market. They invite you to enjoy their portfolio of premium hand-rolled cigars and experience their dedication to producing an exceptional product. So we are excited to bring you our 78th take, and without further ado, it is absolutely my pleasure to welcome in the one, the only, Mr. Terence Reilly of Aganorsa Leaf. Terence, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, just living the dream. That was quite an introduction. Thank you.
You are absolutely welcome, man. I love giving that answer. In fact, I think it almost kind of drives my coworkers crazy because they feel like they've walked into something when they say, "Hey, Bear, how you doing today?" I'm like, "Oh man, living the dream," and that's my answer to typically almost 100% of the time. And you kind of feel the proverbial eye roll, and I'm like, "Man, I have a great job, and then my second job is I smoke cigars. My third job is I get to talk to people like Terence Reilly." I mean, geez, man, I am living the dream.
What could be better?
Absolutely. Well, I wish we could kind of start this podcast off with a little bit better news. Our good friend Will Cooper is always, he's commented on a couple of shows that I've co-hosted with him. He's like, "Man, I really wish people wouldn't ping me in the middle of the show. Don't they know that I'm on a show?" And we're about to start. We're about to come on air, and then he hits us with some terrible news for anyone, of course, but considering our allegiance and fan base to Red Sox Nation, we found out just a few moments ago that apparently David Ortiz was shot in the Dominican Republic, and this is absolutely crazy. The good news is it appears that he's wounded and he's been hospitalized, and the suspect has been arrested, according to some Dominican journalists. So, but the current condition is unknown as of I don't have a timestamp, but the key word here is wounded, and he is hospitalized. So there's some good news, but this is, I mean, I don't know. I think I kind of missed an opportunity, Terence. I should have grabbed the bottle of whiskey, apparently. Just like you did. So
after that, I need to settle my nerves.
Yeah, man. I'm still kind of shell shocked about this. I just read it just a few moments ago when we both were about to go on. I was like, "Man, we got to go on air," and I was like, "This is absolutely awful." But you were actually telling me that there's been some other recent events down there that have kind of caught the headlines as well.
Yeah,
recently?
they had these two hotel guests at a resort, like the young people. They both died of some strange, either infection or it was bizarre. And then there was a guest, a woman at a resort in Putacana, I think it was, that a guy that was dressed as an employee of the resort obviously wasn't. They kidnapped this woman and like beat her half to death,
Goodness gracious.
and yeah, so it's crazy. I mean, I don't know what's going on down there. It's the Wild West.
Man. Well, here's hoping that Ortiz has a full recovery and a swift recovery at that. And but that's scary, man. That's scary for anyone. But I mean, to put it in context, he means a lot to so many communities, to Red Sox fans, to the city of Boston, and to his home country. He's done so much for all three communities, and by all accounts has been an upstanding gentleman and an ambassador for the game of baseball and just in general and stuff. So thoughts and prayers certainly are with him and his family during this time, and hopefully all can be well. But yeah, definitely some scary news coming out of the Dominican for sure. Wanted to Terrence, I thought I was going to think about starting this because it was starting the show with another interesting note, something that I was thinking about the other day. And I know that you kind of, not to be melodramatic, but you kind of inspire me in a way. Because as you know, as people may know, you're a father, and I have a son, and I have a son, and I have another son on the way.
Oh.
And the question arises: Can one work, as hard as you do and as I do, and still make time for family? And there are sacrifices to be sure, but I always see you posting pictures with your son, posting pictures with your family when you're not at work on the road and everything. So my question was a little bit different with all this news of so Texas just announced, this really upset me. Texas just announced this week they're now the 15th state to make age 21 the legal tobacco purchasing age. Now it is purchasing age, so this question is relevant, but not at the same time. But I got asked this week, and so I wanted to ask a fellow tobacconist who also has a son and enjoys cigars as much as we do. Granted, you don't live in Texas, but what are your thoughts on not necessarily being able? Because I was asked this week, not being able to necessarily share a cigar with your son on his 18th birthday, if he chooses to, that possibly having to wait till 21.
I'd probably just do it anyway, to be honest with you. I mean, really, that's problem solved. I mean,
Problem solved.
What are they going to arrest you? I mean, it is what it is. I mean, when he's 18, we'll take a trip to, Mississippi or something, or a state that, or a state that probably still doesn't have a ridiculous law like that. Or, who knows, another country. I don't know, but we'll figure something
probably
out.
Would have to be another country. Unfortunately, It's probably going to go national and everything.
Yeah.
But I had a similar answer. I said, if my son is old enough to serve his country, then and he wants to smoke a cigar with his old man when he's 18 years old, then we'll find a legal way, because I have to be somewhat of an example. We'll find a legal way and means to do it. We'll figure something out. So
yeah. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly. So on to talking about the reason we have you on tonight, Terrence. First of all, have to congratulate you on an amazing 2018, so far 2019. What you guys have done at Aganorsa Leaf, what you have accomplished at Aganorsa Leaf in the last 12 months and beyond has been, I mean, you would have to view it as a success, would you not?
Yeah, no, we're very happy. It's gone really well, and it's gone faster than I even expected in terms of growth and in terms of enthusiasm for the brand, which is really the most important thing. The most important thing is, the only metric of success is the consumer's enthusiasm for the product, because that transfers to everybody else. So that's the most rewarding thing, is we've seen so much enthusiasm for the cigars we make.
Now, the couple of the let's get the crazy stuff out of the stuff that everyone always wants to hear about and everything like that. But you've some recent pictures have been posted on social media about a lunatic locos that you were actually smoking earlier today. So is that something that your fans can expect at IPCPR this year?
Yeah, IPCPR is. Let's see if I can get it in here somewhere. We're going to have several releases. We're really excited about them. And several of them are going to feature what we have is a shade-grown Corojo Maduro wrapper that we've developed. And to be honest with you, when they first told me about this last year, I thought it was a gimmick. I was like, shade-grown Maduro. That doesn't sound. But when I was down there in January,
Sounds like an oxymoron, actually, is what it sounds like.
yeah. No, I mean, it's just I was like, doesn't that defeat the purpose of Maduro? Anyway, they were really excited about it, and they're like, no, watch it. It's a different process, and it has a unique taste. And so when I was down there, I saw them, harvesting it. They have about 90 acres in Jalapa growing shade-grown Corojo Maduro, and then when you taste it, it's completely different. And really, what they do is they get the rich Maduro hue by a longer fermentation, basically. And so you still have that dark, rich hue, but because it's been grown under different conditions, it doesn't taste like San Andres. It doesn't taste like broadleaf. It has a completely unique taste. And it's something we're really proud of because basically we're the only ones who have something like that. So we'll be featuring several cigars, and the Lunatic Loco will be one of them.
Well, it just goes to show you, and we were actually talking about this the other day. And I say I was talking about this on the media panel show that I was co-hosting along with, or actually, excuse me, I was guesting with Coop and Aaron and some of the media guys from Developing Palates. And I said, what I found really interesting in particular, and I actually mentioned this to Brady Hayak last week on our 77th take, was how a factory like Aganorsa Leaf can produce, and where they rely, your leaf is your strength. That's the core mission behind you all. But how a factory who relies so heavily on their product can produce such a vast and diverse portfolio, also other brands as well, because the Aganorsa cigars and Foundation cigars or Jeremy Jack cigars, there's some of them. I mean, some of them have similarities, but they are so spread out along the spectrum. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think every guy brings his own palate to the table, and what I think is great for us are two things. One is that the guys that we work with are one of the best examples of the quality of tobacco we have, because these guys can work with anybody. And so Nick or Dion from Illusion, Nick from Foundation, Kyle from Warped, whether it's HVC, Jeremy Jack, whatever brand it is, these guys usually have a choice of a lot of manufacturers, and these guys know tobacco, and they're not coming in and, you set 5 cigars in front of them and they go, okay, I'll take, C. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just, that's a different process than really going through bales and working the tobacco and seeing what you can come up with. So we have guys that really have a reputation for knowing tobacco that prefer to work with us. And also, we have a signature flavor, of course, but there's the different expressions of that signature flavor. So that baseline of our tobacco is in everything, obviously, but a Viaje is going to be different than Illusion and so on and so forth. So you have a lot of options, but always the consistency of knowing that signature flavor is going to be there.
And I've heard you mention that before, and I really like that the use of the word expression. Expressions of within with the use of the same tobacco.
Yeah.
And how diverse and how you guys are able to deliver that time and time again, and with the people that you work with, and even within yourselves. Just to go back to the shade grown Corojo Maduro. So you were kind of talking about the profile of this tobacco a little bit. Is it mostly, is the sweetness more on the creaminess side, as opposed like a shade grown tobacco would be, as opposed to that rich, decadentness?
It doesn't have it's not gritty in kind of that earthy, gritty taste that San Andres or broadleaf tend to have. And again, that taste is great. We use San Andres on most of our Maduro tobacco. It just, a lot of people have access to that tobacco. A lot of people use that tobacco. With this, it's only us. So it's more of a sweet taste. It's got a sweetness to it. It does have that creaminess, but it's rich still. It's somewhere in between like the San Andres and the broadleaf style of Maduro, and then that classic kind of like Ashton style Maduro. So it's in between there, and I find it very rich, but it has more finesse, I think, than a lot of the Maduros that are out there.
That's gonna be a really fascinating project to sample, and considering it is something completely different. And this is kind of the second year in a row that Aganorsa Leaf has been a part of something incredibly unique. You know, last year HVC produced the first broadleaf to ever come out of Aganorsa Leaf, and that was a sensational product as well. Plus the signature that was released last year, amazing cigar,
and with Medio Tiempo.
And that is actually having a counterpart is actually being released this year as well.
Yeah, and that will also be shade-grown Corojo Maduro, which is, again, here we can pop that in there.
There it is.
So, and then we'll have one other that also has the wrapper that we haven't announced yet, which I think people are going to be really excited about. But yeah, I mean, I think that shows you the benefits of being vertically integrated, of having the capacities we have. We can use things like Medio Tiempo. We can develop a wrapper that nobody else uses. We can do these things because we have the capacity to do it with our resources and being vertically integrated.
So you're unfortunately not smoking tonight, but I wanted to talk about what I was smoking. So
sure.
You know, Terence, you probably don't run into this very often, if at all, ever. But you know, for someone who smokes vast as I do, and everything, you run into those weeks or those days where you just have like a bad run of cigars, where you're just like nothing kind of hits the spot, a couple are plugged in a row. It's just like a bad run. And I had one of those this week, and had some great cigars this week, but had a bad run of some in a row where I just need something just really good. And I gotta tell you, what I'm smoking right now absolutely hits the spot. I'm not just saying this because you're on, man, but I really had a crummy run this week, and I needed something good, and I lit this up. And the guy who referred me to this cigar absolutely hit the nail on the head with it, and it just happens to be one of your products. It's the Buena Cosecha, and it is phenomenal, just a fantastic cigar. But you have a pretty unique story about this particular blend, don't you?
Yeah, Buena Cosecha. When I first interviewed with the company, I sat down with Paul Palmer, our president, and he gave me one. And at the time, it had a different band than the one you had. It had the band that kind of looked like something that would be on the wall of a Chinese restaurant. And I looked at it and I kind of said, wow, this is what you want to give me to kind of impress me about the company. I was like, okay, well, whatever. But then I smoked it, and it was the box press torpedo edition, and it was delicious. And it had its own, it had that, signature Aganorsa flavor in there, very dominant. There's always a various degree to which that essence is there. And in this cigar, it's really strong. And I was blown away. I thought it was excellent. And it was kind of a good analysis or example of the company. It had this just incredible tobacco, these incredible cigars, but it just didn't project well. And people didn't know the brands, and they didn't identify with it, and they didn't understand the brand identity. And so it became, but that's an easier fix than a product that's not good. Whereas if it's not, and plus I can't really correct that. I mean, I don't work in the factory. I'm not there every day. Those guys have to, resolve any problems that are going on down there. I really have no control over that. Whereas on this side of the world, it's something that I would have more involvement in, and I'd be able to focus on correcting it. So we brought it in line with the other brands that we make. It says Aganorsa on there now, and it's just an excellent cigar. I mean, it's still one of my favorites that we make, and it's a big part of the reason I'm with the company.
I feel like that a lot of brands have that. Well, some brands actually make, some amazing cigars. They have that kind of, not to steal the name of the cigar we were just showing off a moment ago, but it's always nice to have that brand that has like that signature, that you have that signature moment with,
Sure.
Not necessarily that signature cigar, but you have that signature moment with, where you're absolutely captivated by it. It's something you always will gravitate towards, and it's interesting because that that cigar for me has kind of creeped up here and there a little bit more often with some other brands and everything. Um, but man, I am just thoroughly enjoying this cigar, and I'm really excited about the project that you were mentioning with the sun grown Corojo Maduro wrap. Excuse me, shade grown Corojo Maduro wrap. That's just gonna, man. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. Um, and then just the flavor components that you're talking about, just how interesting that could be. But one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, Terence, a couple weeks before the show and everything is like, as I mentioned, briefly, kind of post introduction there at the beginning of the show, you guys have had a tremendous last 18 months, really, is what it's been. And the rebranding of the company, you've, of course, been at the center stage with that, of course, with all the amazing people that you work with, of course, Eduardo and Max and Paul. And the entire team there at Aganorsa have just done a sincere. Frankly, I think you guys could write a book on how to rebrand. I mean, in all sincerity, but I mean, it has been such a tremendous run for you guys. Like how you've done this, you've been in this game for a long time, Terence. When you have that much success in a relatively short amount of time, and you need to keep momentum going, how do you deal with that challenge, as opposed to obviously you want to get to the point that you guys have been at for the last 18 months?
It's a good question and a wonderful lead up to it. Thank you. This is a wonderful interview so far. No, it's a great question. I think one is consistency. You have to continue to be consistent. I think a lot of times what happens is you get a little success and then you kind of go, okay, this is great. It's going to last forever. And you kind of sit back and then that goes away and the pipeline, isn't full. And now there's a period of slump where you got to get back in and then you're getting back there. So the consistency is a big part of it. You have to really, you're only as good as your last day, and really come in every day and look to beat yesterday, no matter how good yesterday was. So that's a big part of it. And I think that you have to always evolve. So what's working now might not work in 2 years, or might not be the popular thing, or where are things going, and what are the opportunities that are starting to emerge now that in a year will really be full blown and you'll be ahead of the game a little bit. So looking at those things, I'd say the two, being consistent and evolving and looking towards what's possible down the line, whether that's 6 months or a year or 2 years.
I think that momentum is something that's always probably the most challenging in any type of business, and this is one of those quintessential questions that really drives the cigar industry, because in the day and age, and I think the subject has been beat to death, but it's worth noting, because I think companies like yours are actually really leading the companies like yours are kind of leading the way in combating this constant desire for the what's new in a really unique fashion. Yes, you have a very unique project, as we just talked about a few moments ago, but there are also tremendous blends that you guys have been manufacturing for years, that are getting re-highlighted. Can you talk about a little bit about that, about bringing cigars that have been on the market for years and kind of making them kind of the new what's new, to put a turnabout phrase on it?
Yeah, I mean, last year, for instance, other than really Signature, there was really nothing that wasn't already there. So I think for us, it was just, how do you take something and tie it in with everything else? The problem was that a lot of things were scattered all over the place. So you had Aganorsa Leaf, or Aganorsa Leaf Connecticut, which we changed the band, changed the not the name, but we focused more on the Aganorsa Leaf part of it, and tied it into everything else. When you do that, it gives you the ability to kind of harness the things that are working well and bring it in together, and it creates more of an impression, whether it's on the shelf or whether you're posting a pic or anything else, because now people say, okay, this is part of this overall company and it's part of this overall identity. Whereas if you have a bunch of products on the shelf, I think a lot of times the issue is, if something, even if it looks nice, if it doesn't somehow relate to the other things you do, when they look on the shelf, they just see a whole bunch of different stuff. And if you can make things stick out in a way, I mean, the best probably at this is Perdomo. Perdomo, you look at a shelf of Perdomo and you know everything on there is made by him, and that's really, I think, powerful. When you walk in the humidor and you see his displays, and he's used planograms and everything like that, it's really impressive to see that. So I think it's just a matter of tying things together and creating more coherence in the packaging and the presentation, and knowing what you're doing. I mean, it's when you come out with something, whether it's new or it's rebranded, it's like, why are you doing it? Oh well, we'll just do it and see what happens. I mean, or yeah, we'll have something new to call it new. You have to really think about, what's the purpose behind it, and where does it fall into the market, and where does it fall in, your portfolio and everything else. And we have to kind of ask those questions. So we try to focus on how to make our cigars become more coherent and speak to the consumer more clearly than they had in the past. And I think that, and it's been very successful.
It's interesting that you say speaking to the consumer, because I think that as much as that should be the goal a lot of times for companies, I feel like that's also kind of been one of the most lost things when it comes to a lot of cigar companies. A lot of cigar companies do it well. You guys, and you mentioned Perdomo, and there's a few others that really kind of speak to the consumer from a number of different ways, whether it's social media presence or whether it's specifically what Nick Perdomo is doing. He almost does very little social media, but when you, like you said, when you walk into a humidor, you know where his cigars are, and it really just pops off the shelf like that. But my question is to you, Terence, is again, you've been doing this for a number of years now. This is your second company where you're having some tremendous success, obviously. How do you stay fresh? You have a terrific team at Aganorsa, so I don't want to make this seem all about you, and I know that that's probably going to be part of your answer. But how do you personally stay fresh on how to engage the consumer and how to make that connection from what you guys are doing and from the seed all the way to translate that into what becomes a tremendous cigar, ultimately a sale, and that connection with the consumer?
I mean, I think you just kind of pay attention to what's going on. I mean, you have to see what are the consumers doing? What are they buying? What are the various avenues to reach consumers? Where are the consumers looking for their information? And you just kind of stay cognizant of that. And I think it's not a complicated answer. You just see what comes and you take the opportunity. It's like, a guy gets in the batter's box and, there's a various bunch of pitches that can come his way. And if he's kind of studied the pitcher and knows what the guy throws, or he's had a couple of bats or whatever it is. I mean, maybe this isn't a good example, but the idea, the idea is ultimately that if you don't know what he's going to throw, but if you just do the research and then when you see the opportunity, you jump on the pitch, and that's really all it is.
I always know when I am talking to a true cigar industry person, Terence, because even when I'm talking to one of the best at what they do, they still remain humble in
this business. You have to show humility. I mean, number one, it takes one person to screw it all up. It takes one person. I mean, really, and you're so dependent on so many people. I mean, how many times has a person, being in, working on retail side, come up to you and said they took the band off the cigar and it tore the wrapper, and they go, "Oh, bad cigar. This is a bad cigar. I need a new cigar." And that cigar could have been blended perfectly. Tobaccos could have been aged perfectly. Could have been rolled perfectly. The guy that puts the band on, a little too much glue, tears the wrapper. Now it's a bad cigar.
Even the cigar could be pluming. It could be absolutely gorgeous and perfect, and you're like, "Oh, well." When that happens, Terence, I can just get excited because I'm like, you know what, I'll smoke it. That's fine.
Yeah. So, the point is that if you're successful, it means a heck of a lot of people did their job right. And really, if you're not giving them credit for that, then, at some point it's going to bite you because you can't do it alone.
So, and if I'm interpreting your answer correctly too, Terence, I think that you rely on not just staying engaged yourself, but also the experience that you've had, the experience of others. And so standing on the shoulders of, we've had this conversation before, just standing on the shoulders of other previous generations to deliver the finest product to the consumer, and giving them ultimately what they want, right?
Yeah, giving them or communicating in a way that they are more open to. People take information differently now. People used to read newspapers. Now they go online for their news or information a lot more than they used to. So you just have to pay attention to how people are going to receive your message and where they're most apt to be open-minded towards it and focus on that.
And speaking of going online to get one's information, just flipped over really quick, and at least we can have some good news outside of the interview. We've been talking a lot of great things at Aganorsa Leaf tonight, but we started off the show with a little bit of a downer. But we got a little bit of upbeat news. Boston Bruins just won in convincing fashion.
I hope Coop is watching.
I really hope so too, man. That was kind of a dig, and I was like, man, come on, dude, what the heck?
Yeah, he's getting those comments in. I think I did something to him. I've been getting a lot of those type of comments lately from him.
I tell you what, man. Coop does an incredible holds everyone to the same accountability level that he would have want for himself, man. And that's one of the most respectful things I have about him. But man, if your team loses or wins, he expects to hear from you. And I'm like, man, sometimes I just don't have the time to comment about a bad loss or a great win for that matter, man.
No, I'm just joking around. Yeah. In fact, he knows a lot about sports, and so it's fun to talk to somebody who actually knows something about sports, where a lot of guys are just bandwagoners and they come on when the team is good, and they have no idea what they're really talking about.
Yeah, no joke. There's been a lot of experience with bandwagoning in Boston the last couple of decades for sure. But we had a century of misery for baseball fans. I think we can be a little gloaty now. I think that's permitted. I think that's okay.
Well, if it's not now, I don't know when it is.
Although we did get swept this past series, so it's not really much to get too excited about. But
yeah, we got Tampa too.
Yeah,
not good.
I picked them to. I picked Tampa to do well this season. I think the way they started was a bit of a surprise, but how well that they started and everything. They kind of come back a little bit to reality, but then I was hoping we would have a little bit better of a weekend. Boston speaking against them, but no dice as Blake Snell came back off the IL and decided that he remembered that he was a Cy Young winner, and that was
it. That was the end of that.
So Terence, just again, really want to tell you how much I really appreciate you coming on tonight, and thank you so much for your time. We're really excited about what Aganorsa Leaf's going to be doing here in the rest of 2019 and going into 2020. Wanted to ask a couple of last minute questions too before we concluded the interview tonight. And the one last thing that I wanted to say is when you talk about, you said when you first heard about the project of the shade grown, I got it right this time, the shade grown Corojo Maduro, you were kind of taken aback like that. When you were introduced to a project in any company, whether it's Aganorsa or your previous company, and you were introduced to a project that you necessarily were skeptical about, like how did you approach it in a way like, okay, well, this is a project we're going through with, whether I'm skeptical or not, I need to be able to understand where we're coming from. What was your personal strategy in kind of, combating this one in particular, or maybe ones in the past?
Well, you just stay open-minded to what they're doing first, and then you see where's the best way to apply it. So, I mean, let's just say this wrapper was not as good as we ultimately decided it was. I mean, there's bundles for it. I mean, so it doesn't have to necessarily end in one direction. You just kind of go in there and say, okay, what's the possibilities on this, and then follow that lead. Really, it's as simple as it's not. It's very general, generalized in terms of, for me at least. When they told me about it, like I said, it sounded kind of crazy to me. But then I went down there and I saw how they did it, and I saw how it tastes, and I said, okay, great. You have to just keep an open mind. I mean, you just don't ever know what's going to happen, and the more opportunity you give yourself to see a way to apply something or utilize something that nobody else has, I think is only to your benefit.
In that way, it's really kind of interesting. You say open-mindedness, that brings about a really interesting point, because like when you have access, and what you guys are able to do at Aganorsa Leaf specifically, it's you guys aren't necessarily a boutique brand in the sense of where you have a very small factory and you're producing just one brand of cigars. You guys have a massive portfolio, and as I mentioned before, you guys work with a lot of other different brand owners down there as well. There are a lot of different options where you may not necessarily be able to use the tobacco and someone else is, or you guys can flip it to a, where you guys had it intended for a certain project, and then you kind of redirect it. It's got to make work, that part of the work, really like fun. I mean, just to put a simple word on it, I mean, because you can do so much with just one tobacco, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have, I think it's about 1,500 acres. It's in Manzana. It's like 800 manzanas, and manzanas, I think, is like it's about 1,500 acres. So that's a lot of area to grow tobacco. Different fields, different lots, different primings. So there's, the possibilities are endless, and just finding which possibilities work best and are most viable and most exciting.
Yeah, just I'm kind of curious because I had a recent conversation with Jeff Forsowitz, who we both know, and he has the FSG farm, which has 20 acres as opposed to
Yeah.
1,500, a microcosm of the total amount of land that you guys work with at Aganorsa, and you guys do a great project with him, the Army of Angels there at Aganorsa. But so, how many? Do you roughly know how many pounds of tobacco one season produces for you? Because
Pounds,
it's
I can't tell you.
5,000 pounds for him
It,
and 20.
for I can tell you bales. So we get about 14 to 15,000 bales of tobacco. So I don't know how much. That's a lot of weight. It's heavy.
Yeah.
So just take a bale and multiply it by 15,000. That'll give
Oh
you the
my
weight.
goodness. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. I think it's one of those really exciting things when you kind of think about what you can do. I mean, we're talking about 15,000 bales of tobacco, all different kinds, different vintages, different lots necessarily, and even different seeds. Even in the core ones that you guys deal with, and what you're able to do with that is just incredible. You guys produce some of my favorite cigars, particularly. I really, really enjoy. I'm really, really enjoying the cigar, man. I mean, when you say a cigar hits the spot, this has been as equally enjoyable as our interview tonight, Terrence. I really
Ah,
appreciate it. So thank you.
thank you, thank you.
I like to conclude our interview with a little bit of a curveball question. I kind of started the interview with the Tobacco 21 thing, and our sons, and sharing a cigar with them when they become of age, whether that's 18 or 21. But what I always like to do is kind of throw, and I say curveball, but it ends up being what I equivocate to as softball, because I never want to like trip up anyone too much, but it's just meant to be fun and everything. So the question I would like to ask you, Terrence, is you're a sports fan, as we've kind of tackled sports a little bit here in this interview and in previous interview before. And other times that we've had the opportunity to get together and socialize, we've talked a little bit about sports as well. But if outside of sports and outside of cigars, what's a moment that you've shared with your son, or shared with your family, or that you're looking forward to in the future, that you're like, this is something that that kind of is a defining moment for you? I know it's hard. I know it might be a little bit hard because of, those two items are so close to your identity and so close to your heart. But is there anything outside of those two arenas that you are really excited about sharing with your
Well,
family?
I would say, I mean, I do enjoy reading. If my son ends up being interested in history or in literature and things like that, and having those kind of conversations, which at 7 you can't really have yet. It, if that's something he's interested in and enjoys, that would be something I would really enjoy, is having those type of conversations.
Who are some of your favorite authors?
I like
Not that you have
Nabokov.
much free time, but what do you like to
Yeah.
read? What does Terrence
No,
Reilly like to read?
well, I still get to. I mean, I usually wake up and read, and so I read still a fair amount, but I like Nabokov a lot. What's his name? God, I'm tired. No Country for Old Men.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Uh,
no, the name's escaping me too.
Carmack McCarthy. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, it's been a long day. I like Chekhov a lot. And then what I've been doing a lot lately is I go back and I take a book I read at a different stage that I either liked or I hated, or for whatever reason, and then I read it again to see what I thought of it then. So I did that with a lot of stuff with Catcher in the Rye. How now, you're in high school, you read that, and you think, oh, this guy, you kind of relate to the character, and he's like, oh, he's like, everybody says, oh, that's me. And then I read it in my 20s, and I found him to be a lot more annoying. I found him whiny. I found him not as enjoyable a character. And then I read it in my early 30s, and I thought it was sad. I thought you could see this kind of lonely kid that like just was confused, and it was a much sadder book to me. So I've done that with a whole bunch of stuff. And it's interesting to see how, how some authors, get better with age for me, and others, Dostoevsky has gotten less good, and Chekhov has gotten better, and Hemingway's kind of been in there, and Conrad. I like Joseph Conrad a lot.
Really, you're a Joseph Conrad fan. So
yeah.
Okay, and then the book is escaping me. What's his
Heart of Darkness? Heart of Darkness, most famous.
Yes,
but there's he has a lot of short stories, Youth, and then he has Lord Jim, one of his novels.
What were your thoughts of Heart of Darkness? I'm curious.
I thought it was a great book. I think it takes into the it addresses people a lot of times they take books now and they look at kind of like the socioeconomics of the time and things like that, and
right.
I'm less interested in that and more interested in kind of the what takes a person from one environment to another, and then suddenly he changes completely who he is, and to what degree are our actions controlled by being in a certain civilization compared to another civilization, and those type of things, I think. And again, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to any of that, but at least that's interesting. And those are kind of the timeless questions. I like books that kind of will be good in 100 years and are not good because they deal with a certain political situation or social situation that exists at a certain time. I recently read it's called Tinkers by Paul Harding. It was the first Pulitzer Prize winning novel from a non-major publishing house since Confederacy Dunces. He's also a UMass grad, but it was just beautifully written. Prose wise, it's incredible, and that's what I enjoy. So if my son ever likes that kind of thing, and I'm not going to force him into it or anything. If he's not a big reader, he likes sports cards or whatever, that's fine too. But if he does enjoy reading, I'll enjoy having those conversations.
I think the terrible thing that Heart of Darkness suffers from is that it especially in today's modern age, is that it gets associated too much with, even though the film is based on the book Apocalypse Now,
yeah.
And I think its reputation even suffers even worse because of that, necessarily for people who weren't necessarily a fan of the film, not necessarily a fan of the book, and I certainly fall into that camp.
Well, the film was pretty well received. I mean, it was a Oscar nominee. Yeah, I mean,
yes. No, it definitely well received and critically acclaimed. It just, for, I think when I was in school and we were studying both the book and the film, it really caught more, I feel, more negative attention than anything else.
Negative in what way?
That it was, well, you can't really say outdated, because when you talk about classic novels, I mean, everything is outdated because it's, written, decades or sometimes even centuries before. But the negative attention that I remember in class about the book in particular was that it just was very almost unrealistic, and I disagreed with that. I didn't particularly like it because I just felt it to be a little bit dry and long-winded.
You're saying the book or the movie was unrealistic?
The book.
The book was basically based on a true story.
Right, correct. No, and that's where that was my main argument against it too, as well. As like I said, that was not my complaint against it. I felt that it was a little bit long-winded. That was my criticism of it. I think I'm gonna take a cue from you though, Terence, because it's been quite a while since I've read it, and I am actually gonna revisit that on your recommendation, and what you've been doing is kind of going back and reading some books and books that you enjoyed before and not necessarily do now, or different viewpoints. So, and I probably will have a different opinion. So I'm gonna give you a book report later.
I'd like to hear it. I'd be very interested. To hear.
I'm going to definitely revisit. Now, for you, I do have a couple of recommendations for books, and for our listeners out there. If you are, since you are a historical fan, um, a couple of books that I've enjoyed that I've read recently in the last couple of years. One of them is absolutely hilarious, but it's a satire, but it is fantastic because it's fraught with historical fact and just going. I am fascinated by our presidents, the presidents in our American history, and Daniel O'Brien, a satirist, and he wrote a book called "How to Fight Presidents: Defending Yourself Against the Badasses Who Ran This Country." It is absolutely hilarious and historically accurate, and the details and historical facts that you will find out about our nation's leaders uh, is just uh, amazing. And
How to like actually fist fight them, or how to like ideologically fight back?
in some cases, both. He takes it from, depending on the president, he takes it from a different perspective each time. So um, I had kind of heard the story. My favorite bit was about Andrew Jackson and how he actually beat off a would-be assassin.
Yeah,
And they
bullets
actually,
in his heart.
yeah, and they had to literally, people were restraining him. People were restraining our president, Andrew Jackson, and keeping them from beating this guy to death. Like, our president would have been a murderer, essentially
Yeah.
a murderer in self-defense, of course, mind you. But
It threatened to hang John C. Calhoun.
yes, absolutely. It's just, oh my goodness. But it's like I said, it's hilarious. It's fantastic if you to learn a little bit more about our nation's leaders. It's a really, really phenomenal book. And from a more serious point, again, kind of focusing on the president bit and historical, you know, so much is focused, especially in recent past, we talked about film a moment ago with Apocalypse Now. The movie Lincoln was, really well received by critics, and Daniel Day-Lewis did a tremendous job of playing, of course, Abraham Lincoln. But a lot of focus has been paid in recent years. They had another film called The Conspirator about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. But a book that I've really liked is Michael J. Klein's The Baltimore Plot, the first conspiracy to assassinate Abraham Lincoln, and talk about how they were the whole recounting of history revolves around the plot that was going to attempt to kill him before he actually was inaugurated. So he was on a train ride, and the idea was to, when he stopped in Baltimore, was to assassinate him before he could even become president.
Really?
So a really riveting book, and just the explanation of the historical context of how Maryland, it was a border state, and so therefore they decided on Baltimore because there was a lot of sympathy for the Confederate cause in that particular town and that particular state, and they thought that would be the best place to do it. It was also it was a strategic place for Abraham Lincoln to stop before he actually did become inaugurated, because of the combativeness. Because at this time, the Confederacy still didn't technically exist yet.
Yeah.
We were still a union at the time, a very, very, it was a very tense, and it was about, the entire country was about to fracture at that moment. So it's a really, really fantastic book. So Michael J. Klein, I'll send you the information.
Yeah,
but Michael J. Klein, The Baltimore Plot, and for a more lightheartedness, Daniel O'Brien, How to Fight Presidents. Really fantastic stuff. And I'm gonna redo Heart of Darkness. I'm gonna reread that and report.
I want a full report. I want a full report on it.
Sounds good. Terrence, again, can't thank you enough. Sunday evening, spending the last hour with me, and I cannot thank you enough. We talk about us both being family men, and for you to pull some time away from your family, just for me and for our listeners and viewers, I truly, truly appreciate it. So thank you so much.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I look forward to seeing you at this year's IPCPR in just a few weeks, and smoking some more of your fabulous cigars, including that amazing project that you're talking about with the shade-grown Corojo Maduro, and that's soon to be third project that you are not releasing at this time. So I have a hunch that'll be leaking out in a few days, if not at the show in a couple of weeks. So we're excited to hear about that as well. So for everyone out there, I really want to appreciate all your likes, shares, comments. Don't forget to download and subscribe. Please leave a review. And if you are listening to us wherever you listen to podcasts, you are listening to us exclusively because of Cornelius and Anthony Premium Cigars. As always, we are sponsored by Drew Estate as well. For my amazing guest, Mr. Terence Reilly of Aganorsa Leaf, I'm Bear Duplessis of Euless, Texas. This was ELOSOFUMAR Takes, our 78th take. Tune in next week for Take 79. We really appreciate it. And guess what, guys? We'll see you next time.